My name's Daniel Mason. I'm the sommelier and food and beverage manager at Big Canyon Country Club in Newport Beach, California. I started as a chef. I was very fortunate to have internships in Copenhagen at Noma, as well as Manresa in Los Gatos, California. Worked the hotel circuit for a little while, and then I spent 12 days in the hospital when I was 24 and was diagnosed with celiac disease. It just made it difficult for me to want to cook at that level. I couldn't really rely on my own taste buds for a lot of the dishes that we were putting out, and so at the time I was in the Willamette Valley, and the transition was really easy to move to front of house and really get into wine. And from there, I've really kind of taken wine and wanted to run with the sommelier thing. And so now I'm in a fortunate space to be mentored by a master somm and working with a really great clientele as well.
Super. Who's your mentor?
Steve Poe.
Okay, nice. So let me ask you some myths that usually people have, right? Red wine gives you hangover than white wine.
I think it's false in the sense of I think alcohol is going to give you a hangover if you drink enough of it. It doesn't matter what it is. I think because of alcohol content, potential residual sugar in red wines, you may see a worse hangover from red wine. But, I don't think there's anything but proper hydration and eating that's really going to battle any of that.
Mixing your drinks, right? When we go to a party, or when they say that don't stick to the whites or stick to the rum or stick to tequila or whatever it is, right? Stick to your drink. Yeah. So what's your thought on mixing drinks gives you a quicker high?
I mean, if you're used to it, or if for me, there's nothing that really beats a great Negroni before dinner and then moving into a bottle of wine. But if you're not used to it or you don't do it very often, I can definitely see it being a little bit much on the stomach from time to time.
What about chilling a red wine? We've heard. I always thought that you should not chill red wine. What's your thought on that? I've
had some really great Beaujolais, some Côte de Provence reds, things like that I really think could use a light chill. I'm more concerned about a red wine being too warm than I am, relatively speaking, to cellar temp being too cold. I think that it's easier to let it develop in the glass and warm up a little bit from cellar temp at 60, 58 degrees than it is to try and bring it down to a drinkable temperature that's accessible for everyone.
Older vintage, is better.
I get this question a lot from our membership at the club, and I always tell them it depends on the style of flavors that they prefer. If you're used to a lot of those really fruit-forward, bold, rich reds like Napa Valley Cabernets and things like that, you may not want an older vintage of wine because those tertiary flavors may not be what you're looking for in your idea of a good bottle of wine. But if you like those lighter flavors, kind of the lighter color, a little bit more tertiary, earthy, matchsticky flavors, then an older vintage could definitely be really appropriate for the dinner. I also think the food could play a huge role in that as well.
Food pairing, right? So that brings me there. Red wine with red meat, white with fish or seafood. Is that true?
My mentor puts it perfectly. It's the sauce is boss. If you're looking at an arrabbiata pasta with fish in it or something like that, you could definitely justify a Sangiovese with that rich tomato sauce, or but something like cioppino that has a really light tomato broth, you may want to stick with Sancerre. And I think one of my personal favorite pairings that is probably really off the beaten path is champagne with a good fatty piece of steak.
This can be a real conversation, right? Do you think canned wine are poor quality than a nice cork wine bottle?
I think you're going to see poor quality in every style of container, and to say that all canned wine is poor quality is not really helping us as professionals or producers move the needle on sustainability and alternative packaging solutions. I've had some really great canned wines, and I really think the question we should be asking ourselves as professionals, as sommeliers, is how do we help producers increase the quality of canned wine, especially in my position at a country club. We have pool season every year, and we want to pour wines, and it's hard to pour wines out of a glass bottle or have someone buy a bottle of wine by the pool because we're concerned about it breaking. Why not increase the quality of canned wine and embrace alternative packaging and increase sales across the board as well?
What about decanting wine, right? Under $10 wine, or let's say decanting Yellowtail or Jacob's Creek, does that even make a difference?
I think in a really young wine, you can see a lot of difference in that, especially if it's whether a can, bottle, anything like that, something really young, I think could benefit from some splash decanting or just a little extra airtime to help it develop a little bit. I don't always think it's necessary, but it's from time to time, and we're in the service business too. Like if a member or if a guest wants their wine decanted, we're not going to tell them that they don't need to either. So there's also that at play as well.
Okay, because I thought that usually expensive wines sort of we decant for like 30 minutes or something, and for like value wines, it's more of just open it and swirl it in a glass and drink. So you still think it's a value add if you decant a wine?
I think it can. I don't necessarily think it's going to increase the quality of the wine or anything like that, but I think it could add some depth of flavor to a wine that otherwise might be monotone in flavor and profile as well. But to say it increases the quality, I would say no.
Just small how-tos, right? So, like, have you ever created a fizz again in a sparkling wine? Like, is there a way? Is there a hack to it? Once you open a champagne, it's gone. Is there any way to do it?
So I've heard about the raisin trick where you drop the raisin in the bottom of the glass before you pour it. I've never tried it myself. I've been blessed with a SodaStream machine. So, when it comes to champagne, obviously it's not the exact same, but it's a really easy way to pump some CO2 back into the wine. And it's typically how I go about that.
How do you upsell, for a second glass to your guests? What's your spiel? Like, what's your 6 magical words?
I don't really think there's magical words. I mean, I'm really fortunate in the country club that I'm at where we've built relationships with a lot of the members and we know them on a little bit more of a personal level than maybe guests in a regular restaurant, something like that. And so we can go about it in a different way where we pair the appetizers and we pair the entrees, and it's more of a conversation. And I think as far as, especially when we're selling, right, you want to create a conversation in something where the guest or the member or someone feels more comfortable talking to you and just have a conversation with them to enjoy another glass if it's necessary for the meal they're having.
Do you use time of the day, to ask them a preferred beverage? Like, for example, if someone's just coming at 10 a.m., I'm assuming that you're asking for, hey, gentlemen or ladies, would you want coffee or anything? And if someone's coming at like 1 p.m., you're asking for a beer or a sparkling, or is there, does time play in your first ask?
I think it does. As the sommelier going over, I'm hoping that they've been offered coffee, juice, and alternative non-alcoholic beverages, things like that. My first question, again, especially on the weekends at 10 a.m., it's Bloody Marys, mimosas, kind of those lighter mixed drinks to maybe help a hangover or something like that. And then as the day goes on, it's a beer, a light white wine, or a light red wine. And then as we venture into dinner, we can go a little bit richer, a little bit more bold because we know there's going to be food with it.